welcome back. This is Brooks Willig from the Hobby Time Workshop, and I'm here to bring on the next presenter for the NMRA Gateway X. Uh, our next presenter is an NMRA member in the St. Louis, Missouri area with a basement-sized HO layout. He models the Louisville and Nashville Railroad set in eastern Kentucky in the mid-50s era. He helps run the annual St. Louis RPM and was the modeling committee chairman for the Louisville and Nashville Historical Society for 20 years. Please welcome Mr. Jeff Kuebler.
Thanks, Brooks. Tonight we're going to go over a quick video on track weathering 123. It's something that I've just been recently getting out to more layouts in the St. Louis area, and I noticed on a lot of the Facebook videos and photos that I see that a lot of people get their layouts up and running, and then they don't get the track, and then they get the scenery, and then all of a sudden they need to weather the track, and it seems like an afterthought. And I'm just thought to myself, maybe we should tackle that first instead of last. And I think I have a little decent way of doing it to get the 80% solution for most people. It's quick, it's pretty easy, and it's inexpensive. So you should, if you're one of the shiny track people, give it a try and see what you think. So if you're ready to roll the video, we can do that now. Hi, I'm Jeff Kuebler, and this is Track Weathering 123.
This is easy track weathering before it gets laid on the layout. You can do this outside, very inexpensive, but the effects are really good, and it's much easier to do this outside and get the 80% solution done before the track ever hits the layout. Got our 3 cans of paint, our rust colored, our gray, and our black, and we're going to just apply them in that order, just using a different technique, a different spray angle, and a different volume on each one, and it'll give a nice effect.
Our goals today is to do basic weathering of the track before it's on the layout. This will help later on when you start to do scenery. Use the most cost and time effective methods. If you have a big layout, or even if you're on a club layout, cost and time are always factors. And then safety first, paint outside. There's no reason to do this inside the house and have any kind of illness or cancer or anything like that. A little disclaimer first. This is the 80% solution for me. I've come up with this as I'm building my 26 by 32 railroad by myself. Time and funds are always limited. I just think this is a way better solution than having put all your track down and then figuring out, hey, I need to weather my rail while I'm doing my scenery. There's actually very many track weathering techniques out there, and a lot of these results are a lot better than mine. Some of those techniques can still be applied, though, even after you've done my suggestions and the track has been laid. The first thing we want to do is look at the prototype. Regardless of what track brand that you start with, what you want is a uniform and prototypical look. There's a lot of different processes that will work. This will work on either black ties or brown ties. It'll take away the shiny part of the rail on the sides, or it'll even work on weathered rail, pre-weathered rail. This process gets rid of that shiny uniform tie look too. I have not done this on concrete ties. It's just not my era. I model the 1950s, so I'm sure there's a technique out there for modeling concrete ties, but I just haven't tried it yet. This is a scene from Patio Yard in Kentucky that I model. Look away from the beautiful locomotive and focus on the track and the ballast. Look at the colors that you see. You see the brown and the rust and the grayish colors. This is the same yard and Patio Tower, but in a much later era. You can see a lot more of the staining from diesel fuel, leaks, and oils on it. This is not your typical 50s. I bring this in as an illustration to the same yard can look differently in different eras. In a similar view as the last one, we're going to see the same era, but yet I want you to really study the color of the rails and the ties. The close ones and then the far ones that are the main lines going down the CC sub. You'll see a lot of rust colored, a lot of gray colored, and the ties when they get near the switches are all black. This is very typical of this area. So study your own area and understand what all the different tracks, main lines, sidings, yards, understand what they should look like, and then go work from that element right there.
This is a prototype scene, patio yard, Winchester, Kentucky. Again, I'm model 1955, and I never saw any of this growing up. I've had to rely on photos of the prototype to figure out what it looked like. Again, this is something that is difficult in prototype modeling, but with the resources of books and videos, you can get it right, or you can get it just about right by going back in time and looking at these resources, joining your historical society, and getting as many looks at things as you can to get it right.
So after studying hundreds of prototype photographs of the L&N in Kentucky, I saw some things that I wanted to achieve, and that was the rail sides have a rusty color, the ties have an aged or sanded appearance with a gray tone, and everything gets dripped with oils, cinders, and stains of dark or black colors. Before I begin the project, I always like to have everything on my list, which includes flat rattle can spray paints of rust, gray, and black, masking tape, the thin roll, an old piece of cardboard, kind of a long piece, especially if you're doing flex tracks, the Dremel Moto tool with the wire wheel attachment, and a Sharpie black marker.
We're about ready to go here. We have our 3 kinds of paint, all of them flat. We have our rust colored, our gray, and our black. All these are brands that you can get at just about any store in the U.S.
A little track pre-work may be necessary. With Flex Track, you can oil the railheads with a light oil first by putting some 3-in-1 or WD-40 on your fingers and rub them down the top of the rails. The advantage of that is the paint layers will come off much easier when you're trying to clean it. The disadvantage is there might be a ragged looking unpainted area near the railhead on the sides of the rail. My layout has many eye-level areas, so I chose not to do this because I've had a little bit of bad luck with it in the past. If your layout is very low, this is something that you might want to do if you have a ton of track to put down. On switches or turnouts, our main goal is to protect the switch points, the head blocks, and the throw bars. And to do that, we have 1 or 2 layers of thin masking tape will be enough.
I've got some Code 70 micro-engineering flex. You can see it's got brown ties, and the sides are pretty shiny. This is micro-engineering Code 70 weathered rail. You can tell most of the shine's been taken off of that, but it's still got a little bit of shine to it here in the sunlight. We're going to take that off too. And then we've got a completely shiny Code 70 Shinohara switch. I've picked this up at a good price, done a little work to it, put in a copper tie for the throw, and it's ready to go now too. You can also see it's got some rail joiners that are also already soldered on. I'm not going to take those off. I'm just going to mask them real quick. So here we go with the masking. Again, this is just regular thin masking tape. We'll just take a small bit of this, wrap it once around the points and the throw bar. We'll get to that later. Doesn't really have to be weathered. All we want on that part is to protect it from too much overspray. So we're going to do that end, and then on the other ends where you've already soldered your rail joiners on, we want to protect those a little bit there where we don't want the paint to get down into the rail joiner and cause an isolation problem later on that we can't figure out. So we've got those ready to go.
I've been using Rust-Oleum rattle cans for years, and I've never had any problem with them adhering to any of the major brands of track and rail.
I've got cardboard base set up, and it's elevated off the ground so I can get a good angle when I'm shooting first with the rust. It's important that you go side to side and the can's not upside down or sideways, so I've just elevated the whole surface just a little bit with my cardboard background.
Step 1 is painting the sides of the rail rusty. A low angle spray is needed. Continuous side to side motion is the key. Elevate your track and your backing with your surplus cardboard. You need only to paint the inside and outside of each rail. So you don't want to spray this color from the top down. You're spraying from the side. This also may involve spinning the track or the cardboard around after the first sides are painted.
So again, we have our Rust-Oleum red-brown flat. This is enamel. This is fine for the project. It'll work great for rusting the rails on the side. We have our Coach 70 Flex track here. It's ready to go. Give that one final shake. And here we go. What we want to do is do a fine, even side-to-side spray on this. As you can see, I'm just kind of hitting it, making sure the shine is off. There we go. That's one side. I'll let that dry for a minute. We'll move to our weathered flex. Again, this is already weathered. We're just going to hit it lightly a little bit. That's one side of that. Again, low angle. We're using a side-to-side motion. Work a little bit on our switch here. Again, same thing. We're going to go side-to-side, low angle. I'll make sure to get those frogs pretty good. Flip this around. Get the other side. That's all we have to do is really just give it a nice spin. Some of those rails have an odd angle. That's a little hard to get. Don't want to get too much, but there we go. That's pretty good. The switch has the rust on it. Now we'll spin these around and get the other sides. Switch out of the way. Now you can do these because of the angle. Sometimes you can do multiple tracks at once. This step, I prefer kind of doing one or two. That's it. Again, short bursts, but side to side. And that's all we have for the rail brown part. Pretty easy. Alright, we're looking at our switch again. It's got some areas of the rail that I'm not really happy with. I can still see a lot of shine. Since I've forgotten which way this is going on the layout already, I want to take care of this now. I can't get those angles very good once it's on the layout. So go back to the red-brown one more time. Get those angles. And that's pretty much got it. Again, pretty easy stuff. We're going to let that sit and dry for a bit. It's really humid out here today. A little bit of a breeze. But mostly just humid and hot. So we'll let that dry for a little bit.
Step 2 is aging the top of the ties and adding that sanded appearance to the rails. Gray spray paint should be applied lightly from a distance from the top down. You want to tint the ties, but not change the color completely. If some of this color gets onto the sides of the rails, it's really okay. It's expected. One of the other things that I do as a hint on this is many pieces of flex track can be shot at once in this step, and by moving the spray can in the direction of the ties instead of the rail, it gives an uneven yet appealing effect.
So if step 1 was already applied, now we're going to move on to step 2. That's the gray. What we're trying to simulate here is that gravel dust, the sand dust, just some aging of the ties, all this together. So this is a different stroke. This, instead of side to side, on the side, this is straight down, and you're going to get a little overspray. You can do this in multiple tracks at once, and you can even do this in kind of a zigzag pattern across with the grain of the ties. Catching a little bit of a breeze out here today, so it's not, conditions aren't exactly perfect for control, but that's okay. As you can see, a lot of this is just, you want some variation, and this is all part of it. I'm going to give these a spin around to show you exactly what it looks like. Make sure that it's kind of even coated. As you can see, some of that didn't get coated nearly as the same on the other side because of the breeze, so we're just going to give it a little bit of a coat. Notice I'm backing off just a little bit here. And had the breeze not been a factor, we'd have been shooting straight down, but I'm having to kind of work with the Kentucky windage as it was in shooting today. So that's step 2 on our 1, 2, 3 process. That's step 2.
One possible optional enhancement tip here is for that replacement tie look. Take a Sharpie marker and color every 5th or 7th tie black. This is especially effective if brown ties are the original color of your flex track. This will look like maintenance has been done, and it's effective on large sections of main lines and sidings. Step 3 is your flat black, simulating the cinders, the oil, and the grime. Now this is a straight down shot, but it's distant. You want to keep just the bigger droplets of paint to show up. Keep the can about 10 to 12 inches from the track. If you've got an old can that's just spitting paint, this is the perfect time to use it. Again, if it gets on the sides of the rails, that's fine too.
Now it's really threatening rain out here today, so we're going to try to get this all in. We're going to move straight to our flat black spray, and again, this is really just to simulate grease and grime, just give it a general grimy appearance. It's flat, very important this is flat black. We don't want anything shiny at all on these tracks, so here we go. I'm going to spray this. It's not windy right now, so I'm going to spray this from above, but at a long distance away. Notice how much higher the can is off the track this time. And if you got a spurty can, an old spurty can, this is a great time to use it too. It's just about out of paint. What you're trying to do here is just give it that multicolored appearance. Kind of a speckled egg look to it. That's about it. That's about all I want to do with that. Again, we'll see. This is what you get. I don't know if you can see that really well or not because of the angle and the sun and everything, but this is the effect that I wanted. It doesn't have any particular color. but it's got all the colors that I want in it. Again, from the side it's a little different than it is from on top, but that's okay. It's exactly what we're looking for. Alright, for a little comparison's sake, we've got our weathered switch that we just did. Zoom into that, show you what that looks like. And then back again, we've got our unweathered switch. Show you what that looks like. Again, now which one of them would you want to put on your layout? I'm going to go with the weathered one. It would look more realistic. Sometimes your layout area may not be scenic for several years if you move kind of slow like I do. So having the track pre-weathered gives it a whole lot more model, good prototype feel to it, even before any other scenery's down. So another thing I like about this is I can go straight to ballast after I've done a scene. Unless I'm unhappy with some portion of the track, I can go straight to ballast after I've got the track down and the scene completed. And then I can go back and do even more weathering on the track to try to blend the ballast and the track together. And I'm not starting from point zero when it comes to weathering on the rails and track. Now we're going to let these dry for about 15 or 20 minutes before we move on to the next part, which is prepping the rails back again for conductivity's sake. We got to get the. We're not going to worry about the rail tops until we get it down on the layout. It's easiest to clean there, but we are going to go ahead and wire wheel the ends of the rails so that the joiners go on and conductivity will occur.
A couple of notes here. For flex track, making curves with this pre-weathered rail will expose some unpainted spots as you flex it. This is easily covered with a paint marker or a micro brush. The points for electrical conductivity have to be restored. This is done most easily before attaching the track to the roadbed or the layout. A small file can be used to remove the paint from the rail ends, but I prefer using a Dremel tool with a small wire wheel attachment.
Okay, we've moved inside to the indoor studio because of weather. And what we're going to do now is clip off the last tie on each of the ends of the track in order to use the moto tool and wire wheel. So first we're just going to go to the bottom of the track. You can see I still protected some of those. I'm going to clip just the end here of each one of the little plastic parts underneath. I've got an old set of rail nippers, and I'm going to should be able to just take that right off. A little more stubborn on that one. Didn't get a good cut. All I'm doing is clipping the plastic on the bottom, and then I'm going to slide that tie off just like that. And you can tell this tie is already weathered. So what I'll do now is I'll just clip off the little plastic ends, and I'm not going to throw this away. It's going to go into a box, and that's in with my track laying supplies, and that gives me pre-weathered ties to go back underneath where the rail joiners are. So save all your ties, pre-weathered ties. So it looks like this switch is ready to go. That joiner's already there. We take the tape off of that. We can tell that these joiners are already there, and they're ready to go. So, and they're clean. We'll take care of that once it's on the layout. So we've prepped our switch. Now we move to the flex track. Again, all we're trying to do is remove the first tie So we're going to give that a nice nip. With the plastic, I like to go all the way back to the tie I'm going to leave. That gives me plenty enough room to put the rail joiners on. Give it a nice snap. Again, this tie is already weathered. We're not going to throw that away. We're just going to nip the extra ends off of it there for the bottom, and we're going to put it in our box. So we're prepping each end of the flex track, 3-foot flex. Again, see how easy that is to nip that off. And we got usually about 50% of them, a little bit stubborn, but I'm giving plenty of room for those rail joiners to go on each end. Again, we've got plenty of ties now that are pre-weathered. By nipping this off, go ahead and put that tie in the box with the rest of them. End up with a couple hundred extra ties. These are ready to be, the rails are ready to be cleaned off now for connectivity purposes. So we've got our Dremel tool with our wire wheel. And we're just about ready to go. Dremel's plugged in, give it a good test. Alright, that's good. The other thing we want to make sure is this has got to be out just a little bit to fit in between the ties and give us a good angle. So we've got that chuck out. We want to make sure that that's in there really tight. We don't want that flying out. So we're going to tighten that up. Depress the button, test it. That's good. That's not going to come out of there. So again, this is just a regular Dremel tool and a wire wheel attachment. It comes in just, I think one comes with the Dremel tool, and then you can buy replacements at any hobby store. So we're going to don our safety goggles here. This is important, just in case that flies out. We don't want to have any accidents and lose an eyeball. So we're going to put our safety glasses on. And now it's time to clean the rails. We'll start with the switch. It's just a little easier to handle. Again, this doesn't have to be on super high. I've got it on 5. Might bump it up to about 7. And what we're going to do is take this wire wheel and just hold it against the wheel, the rail there, just a little bit. We're going to do the insides and the outsides. We want a good connection. It doesn't have to be the whole length of it. I just want to know that the first half of that rail joiner is going to get a good solid connection. I usually go over the bottom just a little bit because that's another good connection point. Now we move to the top of the switch. You got to be a little more careful here. These ties are sometimes hard to get to, and you don't want to bust that. You don't have too many ties in front of those switch points, so you might want to wear gloves when you're doing this. I'm hitting my fingers a little bit. Again, I'm just trying to hit the ends of this and clean off that paint. We got 3 layers of paint on there with all the wind that we had outside. Again, hit the bottom and both of the sides. You don't have to mess with the top now. I wouldn't take a wire wheel to the top of the track. Again, it's still got the paint on the top of the track. Don't be tempted to use the Dremel on this now. We've got a better way to do that once the track's already on the layout. I'm going to switch that off a second and switch back to the flex track. Again, this is 3-foot micro engineering flex track, and all we're going to do is hit the ends of it. Pretty easy. Just hold the rail firmly with the ties. You don't want to bust off any of the ties. They come off. Micro engineering is pretty easy to break off the rail and the tie if you're not careful. So
Again, we got both sides. You see how easily that comes off. I've done this with a file, and after a couple minutes of doing each rail with a file, if you're buying your flex track in groups of 12 and then painting them in pre-weather them in groups of 12, you'll understand pretty quickly that this is the fast way to do it, easy way to do it. You can see how shiny those get, really fast, quick and easy, right? So we'll just go to the other side. Now, I think the other piece of this track, because this one and the other one is pre-weathered rails, and so I'd have to do that anyway on that piece of track to get good electrical connection. So again, all we're doing is just grazing the surface of that. And then we're going to hit the bottom. And that 3-foot flex is done. Okay, it looks like this is the pre-weathered flex track. This rail is a little bit more weathered, but again, it's probably just going to be in a yard. Whoops, forgot safety glasses. Don't want to do that. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to get that small little angle in there between the bottom of the rail and the side, if you don't want that in there. Again, if you're going to solder every joint, that paint can get in there and mess up your connection, mess up your solder joint, so you don't want that in there. So try to get as much of that out as you can. Again, if you can see how that cleaned up really nice, really quick, it's good to go now. And we just do every end just like that for as many pieces of track as we had. Alright, now we've got our track, flex track, tacked down on the layout, and now it's time to show you how to take the paint off the top of the rails. We've got a couple of things we're going to go over first. You need some track cleaners. This is your Bright Boy, and I also have one from Perfect. And the Bright Boy you go over first with real quick, and then take the remaining off with this less abrasive Perfect rail cleaner. So get that out of the way. We'll start with here's our 2 pieces of flex track. As you can see, they're tacked down, they don't move real well, and you can see that some of the paint comes right off. Not too bad. Just rubbing back and forth with a little motion gets 90% of it, and you go back over it, clean that up with the less abrasive track cleaner. Pretty easy. Wipe out section after section of 3-foot long track very easily, this method. So it doesn't take that long at all. And like I say, it's most easy to do this once the track has actually been tacked down. And that's all there is to it.
1, 2, 3.
Let's take a look around the layout and see what the results look like. Here's what our weather track looks like when it's down on regular homicide on the layout. Here's a section of patio yard, and notice the rusty rails in the yard section. It doesn't have as much gray on it as the main line. There's also a section of the points of that switch where I have not yet added paint.
Again, the combination of the track having varying degrees of weathering and the ballast actually having varying colors in it gives it a really nice effect. If you have it all one color, your mind is going to scream out, something's wrong here. So again, variety of colors and textures is all going to look much more natural. As we look around the layout here, we can see some of the track that's already been pre-weathered and installed. And I want you to see how important it is to see the track on its side and also understand that on an eye level track like this, it's really important to get that track weathered well on the sides. If we can, just a little bit. Let's see if that focuses. There we go. Again, we're going through several tracks here and switch points, and we have a center siding in between this northbound and southbound main. But again, this is what you want to see on the layout when your scene is completed.
Here we see the center siding at Riverside from above view. Notice I've made the rails a little rustier on that switch. That was on purpose to indicate that was the siding was in the center. Just wanted to mention that. It's an unusual application, but in this case, the painting can actually help the operators. Here's a final look at the layout. I hope you've enjoyed this track weathering 1, 2, 3. Hopefully the NMRA will come to St. Louis again in a future year and you can see the whole layout.
We do have some questions, so let's go.
Okay.
We got 3
We're
questions.
back on here live. Thanks for that video. Brooks, any questions there?
Yeah, I got a couple questions here. So Jeff, the first question is, I see that you've worked the Shinohara turnouts, or reworked them. Why is that, and what did you do?
Oh no, it mostly it was just I bought a bunch of them for a very good price at a train show, and that's how I get a lot of my switches nowadays. And they just happen to be broken, so I put new head blocks and throw bars in there, and then that was basically about it. Sometimes you do have to do a little work to them, but it was nothing that I intentionally went looking for. It was just one of those happy buys at a show.
Cool. So, well, we'll do that one here in a little bit. So, is there a reason you don't tape the ends before painting? Is it easier not to tape and paint, remove the paint later?
No, I've just never done it that way. I've always thought that using the Moto tool gave a really good electrical connection. I've never had a problem with electrical connections. If I've done that, if I've tried to do it any other way, I'm always a little bit afraid of if I use tape. Probably the blue painter's tape would probably work just fine if you want to try it that way. Um, I just I'm happy with the way that I've done it, and I think it gives a really good electrical connection for the rail joiners. And I don't mind, that tenth of an inch or 2/10 of an inch, going ahead and just painting that once the track is down and right before I ballast.
Pam wants to know, where did you get the L&N vehicle?
Oh, um, is that the small one? Um, yeah, that's an LA Forms, and that's some N scale decals and some Santa Fe maintenance away decals. I made those about 20 years ago. Um, we'll walk around and I'll show that to the people if she wants to see that. I know her dad would like one of those.
Have you ever painted the side of the rails with rust? I'm guessing they're talking about some of the AK products. Some of the modeling rust products, maybe.
I haven't found a need to do that yet. Um, but again, I think really the 80% solution is up front and just do the steps that I showed up front, and then I may go back and do some more steps after I'm done ballasting. I think when I look at my track now, and I look at a lot of other people's track on photos and videos, there's a whole lot of things I can do differently. I recently joined the Facebook group of Detail and Weather Track or something like that, and there's some great stuff on there. I just haven't tried it yet. When I get more of the layout done, I'll probably go back and maybe use an airbrush or some chalks, some paints to put a little more detail in. But right now, I'm pretty satisfied with what I have.
How do you address the sections where the flex tracks are joined? Do you use rail joiners there and then paint those later?
Yeah, right now, today I just was using some of this folk art plaid. I just take a mini brush and go ahead and just get those. I've also used the markers, the paint markers from Flowpool. I've had some success with those, and sometimes the rail joiners, depending on the brand, seem to repel paint. But I find if you go over it 2 or 3 times, eventually it sticks and it covers up most of the shiny rail joiners without. The thing you have to be careful with on those is flooding the rail joiner, um, and actually the paint will flow in there and then stop the current. So unless you've electrified each stick of flex track, you might end up with some dead sections.
So when you curve the track after you've since you're painting it before you put it down, do you wind up with bare spots on the rails where the little ties, the plastic ties of the spike heads, where they move on the
Right,
rail?
you do. Sometimes you do, and sometimes the ballast covers that, and then sometimes that's actually some of the things that I look at and go, I could do that a little better. Um, I suppose during the painting process, if I wanted to um, head that off, I could go back and hit it again after bending it. I've just never felt the need to do that yet. I've always
Okay.
thought the next step or the ballast would cover most of that up, and it actually does. I can show you a couple places in a few minutes and show you where that happens.
Cool. I've got one more question here, and then I think we'd like to get to a layout tour to see some track work
Okay.
for us. So, what's the perfect rail cleaner?
Oh, that's the little eraser.
Okay.
It's got a hole in it. That's the only other way I know to describe it. But Perfect is the brand named on it. I forget who makes it. I had one here in a package a minute ago, but it walked away as usual.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's see the layout.
All right, I'll try to do this without turning everybody off.
Well, if you do, then we'll probably still be here. So.
Okay. So this is patio yard.
And this is Winchester, Kentucky. And this is where the Cincinnati to Corbin line um, goes north and south, and at Patio Tower, the Eastern Kentucky line comes off, and it's a 4-track yard, basically 4 directions, and a few other tracks. And it's got some small steam servicing, water tower, and sanding, a little bit of a rip track, and then a yard office. And we come down the Eastern Kentucky branch is up there in the back by the mail pouch tobacco barn. And then the Cincinnati to Corbin line starts going down. And the EK sub goes up by Mina. I built these little, oh, we needed to stop and see that vehicle. Sorry about that. That's the vehicle that Pam was referring to, the L&N maintenance vehicle. Wanted to make sure she saw that. And then the Cincinnati to Corbin line goes into a double track tunnel.
Hey Jeff, I got a question right there where you're at with the tunnel.
Right.
Somebody was wanting to know where you got the sidewall of formed concrete.
Oh, in the tunnel itself? Or do they say?
No, they didn't say.
Okay. So the rock work is actually pine bark nuggets, stacked and painted with a couple colors of, again, that rattle can Rust-Oleum black, and then the gray over the top of it, and then it's weathered out. It makes really good Kentucky limestone. It's pretty easy process. It's lightweight and it's inexpensive. So I've done a whole lot of the layout is in that type of rock. And then the Eastern Kentucky branch goes over the Red River Viaduct. Let's see if I can show that. This bridge is almost 8 feet long, and the real one would be 24 feet long. So I scaled it down a little bit, but did a little water. And then we run into a little bit of where the doorway is. And then again, the top level is Irvine. And the lower level is just a place called Flanagan. And then it comes around to 12 Mile Creek. If you can see that or not. On the lower branch. And again, that's the Irvine. And then you come over to Ravenna, which Ravenna is a division point for the L&N and large steam servicing facility. All the northbound coal went to Cincinnati, got cleaned and weighed here before it got sent on. Down on the lower level, you've got Riverside, Kentucky, with its dual water tanks and maintenance point. And we'll get a little bit to the unscenic portions. There's pipe coal cleaning. Those 5 tracks there go through the wall and serve a mine on the other side, the Lost Creek mine. And between each side of it, it holds about 110 hopper cars. Here's the unfinished portion of Ravenna and the Kentucky Mining Supply Company. And go back over to the other side. And then this is the mining town of Lost Creek, Kentucky. It's fictional. I took the word. There was a branch on the LN called the Lots Creek, and I took the letters and reversed them so that I could make it kind of the quintessential mine community without having to follow one. So this basically is an amalgamation of all the things that I liked about Eastern Kentucky mines, all kind of rolled into one. You've got your lamp house and a check-in board where they put their markers, and the company houses, and a company store, a small station, and a church. And then, of course, under that's a double helix staging where all the trains come from. And then on the other side is the continuation of Winchester, Kentucky. A lot of these buildings were scratch built from photos. And still have some work to do on this section too. If you ever saw the movie Black Beauty, the passenger station was in that. And then in the Flim Flam Man, another movie filmed about the same time, this Spar and Company coal dealership was in that movie. And there's Winchester. And that's about it, really, as far as what I've got going on down here in the basement.
Cool. I think we all appreciate the tour of the layout there.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That was a great clinic, and some great tips there that I'll definitely be putting into practice on my track work. So thanks again, and we'll get ready for our last clinic for the day, and we'll be back shortly.
Brad, before we go, I think we're probably going to run out of time, but Lionel asked for us to repeat all this again after "Hi, my name is Jeff."
There's always one in the crowd that misses all the information, isn't there?
Oh, well, I think he'll be able to catch it on the rerun since this is recorded.
Yeah, perfect. No problems. Thanks, guys.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.